Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rachita Misra speaking to you. Today in our software engineering course, we will look into the software estimation. As you know, software estimation is one of the major activities under project planning, and we will look into the LOC and the FP and some other process-based methods. So the topics that we will cover are some basics of the estimation, the LOC based method, the FP based method, process based method, and we will touch upon the use case based methods. So we have seen in our previous lesson that project planning steps involves these six kinds of activities that we have to do. And after determining the project scope and determining the feasibility and risk, we have to define the type of resources, and then we have to go to the estimation of the cost and effort. So today we are trying to focus on this activity of estimation of cost. And so what is software project estimation? Software is the most expensive element of virtually all computer based system. Any computer based system, software is the most because nowadays hardware has become is day by day becoming cheaper, but software is day by day becoming more expensive because the skill set required in developing the software is going on becoming difficult. So when you have very trained people and a lot of people are required over a period of time, so software cost becomes very high. So that is why it is very important for us to estimate that cost as correctly as we can do, because it involves a lot of investment from the customer. For complex custom systems, a large cost estimation error make difference between profit and loss. So because the software is developed, customized to the particular person, the organization which has requested it, and they are normally for complex situations, business situations, so they are very large, and when they are large, their cost is also very large. So when you have a large cost, a little bit of error in that can also make a lot of difference, which will upset their profit and loss statement. So that is why it is very important for us to do the software project estimation in a very accurate method. There are too many variables, resource variables, there are technical resources, environmental resources, which needs to be working correctly. And then there could be some political or the organizational management effect on the software project. So all these things will affect the ultimate cost of the software. So there will be some direct impact and certain indirect impact we have to build into the estimation methods. So because we are aware that so many things can happen, so we have to build in these characteristics of these indirect variables also. We have to build it into our cost estimation methods, so that the cost of the software and the effort applied to develop it will be correct. To estimate cost, the effort is the first estimated and resources are assigned to get the cost. So first is the size, then we do the effort, and once we know the effort and the type of resources required will be known, so we will assign the resources, and the resources are having cost involved, so we will know the cost. So it is a step-by-step process. There are different techniques, some of which can be used to validate the estimate. So there are many techniques. So there is no, you cannot say that this is the best. It all depends on the type of software you have, or software you have to deliver, and also it depends on the kind of information that is available to you. So very heavily it will depend on the type of information that is available, so that you can do the correct estimate. So many times what the software team, the planning people, the planners in the software team, what they do, they use alternate methods. That means they don't do one method. They do using different methods. They do estimates. So they have 2 to 3 estimates, And once they have 2 to 3 estimates, and they can check which is the right estimate. So they can validate whether the range is correct or not, and they can take a judicious decision before committing how much should be the actual estimate. So they can either take the maximum or they can take the expected value of 2 to 3 of the estimates. So there is alternate validation is possible. So size and so there are these alternate methods are normally based on size and productivity, or they are based on the process decomposition. And also there are some empirical methods, that means those which are derived experimentally by using some empirical formula as a function of the size. So one by one we will look into all these methods. Maybe empirical methods we will discuss in a separate lesson, but in this lesson we will discuss these 2 types of methods, that is the size and productivity based methods and the process based method. So let's look at the estimation choices, how to do the estimate. So first thing we can say that, okay, let us not estimate it, we will do it later. But then this is not acceptable. I remember having dealt with students who do their student projects, which is for 1 year, 2 semesters. But when I ask them, have you made a project plan? Have you estimated it? Have you determined your activities? Then they say, no, we will do it at the end. We will show you the plan at the end. What it means is that you are not doing a plan. You are basically doing a post-mortem. So, and if you don't have a plan, then how do you know that you have done it correct? How do you know that you have completed all the steps? So it is a very wrong way of approaching a project or any development of the software. So this kind of thing is not acceptable. Okay, so to say that I will do it at the end and therefore it will be 100% correct, that is not the plan, it is actual. What you are doing is a postmortem. It is the actual achievement that you did. You never had a plan. So this kind of situation is not acceptable. It may be okay in a student project because you are doing it within the laboratory, within the college for evaluation of your course. But it cannot be acceptable in the commercially place or any business organization or any engineering scientific software. It is not possible. So we have to go to some other choices. The next best choice is to find a similar project. So what you have to do, you have to go to your project database, the repository, and you have to find a very similar project through what you have on your hand. But then how do you find? This is normally called as the analogous method, because you're trying to find the analogy between the current project that is on hand, you have to estimate, and something you have done in the past. But it can only work reasonably well if the current project is quite similar to past efforts and other project influences, because we know that there are other influences, external influences, deadlines, business conditions, customer behavior, so many other things, and also the tools, the environment that we used. So unless everything is similar, this kind of method of estimation will never give us a very accurate. It can give us an approximate figure, but it will not give us a correct figure. So it is very difficult to determine a exactly similar project in your project database. So there is a lot of risk when you actually use it for your planning. You can use it for marketing to take the analogy method, but it is very difficult. So you can take the analogy and then put some percentage, make it hike it a little bit, because there is a lot of uncertainty. So that kind of things normally a lot of people use to do the initial marketing, but it is not a kind of thing that will go into your project planning. It can go, but it is very risky. It is a method, but it is very risky. You can use it for validation purpose. Then next one is the simple decomposition technique. So here we use the divide and conquer principle, which is very well known in our computer science. And we again decompose our, just like we did it in our architecture. Similarly, for the estimation and the planning also, we do the decomposition. So we decompose the project into major functions, related software engineering activities. And then for each smaller one, because it is difficult to estimate the bigger one, so we break it into smaller parts. and those smaller parts is easier to do a good estimate, correct estimate for the smaller parts. So those things can be performed and then it can be summed up. So this is like a bottom-up approach to the estimation. You break it into a tree structure, and you have the smaller functions and its activities at the bottom of the tree. You estimate that, and then you sum up to the root of the tree. Otherwise, you can use one or more of the empirical models. And in the empirical estimation model can be used to complement the decomposition technique, and they offer a potential valuable estimation approach on their own right. So because here experimentally some formula is determined, so how good the formula is, that is a question, because some your experimental projects that they have taken and your project may not be same, so you may have to make some adjustment. So but it definitely, it is on its own, it is a good method, and it has shown a good promise. And also you can use it, you can use one of the decomposition techniques and then the one of the empirical models, and you can validate your estimation is correct or not, because estimation is very important. The correctness of the estimation is very important for a project, just like process is very important, so this estimation is also very important. Then you come to the decomposition techniques. So that is what we said. The second one is the decomposition. We will see this decomposition because this one is analogy. So this is nothing to learn about it. You just have to go into that. This one we have to learn. So we will today in this lesson we will concentrate on this decomposition technique, and in a subsequent lesson we will focus on the empirical models. So in the decomposition technique, what we can do the decomposition in two ways. One is the problem domain, we decompose into smaller problems or components, or we take the process, that means the activities, and the process model we will take all the processes that, and then we will divide it into smaller activities and tasks. So there are two ways. The first step on the estimation is to understand the scope of the software and generate the estimate of its size. So once we have to go, so we have to basically know the size. So from the scope, we have to get the size. To get the size, what we will do, we will first determine the partitioning of it. So we will do the decomposition and then determine its size. And from the size, we will translate it into the effort, time, and cost. And this we will do by using some reliable metrics of the past project. So that is why we say this is a size and productivity method. So we are determining the size and then we are using the productivity of past project or some standard database we will use, which we can take and do and estimate the effort, time, and cost. Then after that, we can also factor in some of the influencing factors such as team ability, characteristic of the requirement, development environment. So there are many factors. When you go to these particular techniques, you will see that the authors have said to how to factor in these influencing items into our estimate. So there are three steps. First is the decomposition step. Next is the size estimation step, which we do in a bottom-up approach, and then we translate it into effort, time, and cost with what is the actual parameters that we need from the estimation. And we do this by using metrics, reliable metrics of the past projects, either in the organization or externally available from standard organizations like IFPUG and quality research organizations. And then we do the determine certain influencing factors, we factor it into our estimate. So the estimate methods that we will discuss will be software size, that is the first one, and then we will see what are the different ways we can estimate the software size, because that is the first task. Then we will see how to do the problem and process decompositions and determine the effort and time and cost. So we come to the size estimation. So what is the unit of size? In the context of project planning, size refers to a quantifiable outcome of the software project. Size is one of the metrics. If you remember the metrics lesson, we said that the size is one of the metrics of the software product. or the project metrics. So in a direct approach is taken, size can be measured in terms of the code. The code that we are producing at the end of the project, that is supposed to be the size in terms of the lines of code that has been produced. So that is a direct approach. Then there are indirect approach, that means size is represented as functions. Instead of the actual output, we will consider the function that we have to design into it. So that is the indirect method, and that method is called function point, because we are trying to count the number of functions in we are using some method. Four different approaches to sizing problem exists. The first one is you can use a fuzzy logic. So what the person who is planning, the planner, what he will do, he will instead of trying to create the magnitudes, he will first create a qualitative scale. He will fuzzify. He will fuzzify the values, the magnitudes of the size of any component in a qualitative scale. That means whether it is large or it is small or it is medium, something like that. So this is if you have studied the fuzzy logic in many of your computer science course, you might be knowing what is fuzzification. So once you get your characteristic fuzzy function, then you can do an inference system on the you can create your fuzzy logic rules, and from that you can get your actual the fuzzy output. And once you get the fuzzy output, you have to bring it back to the original range, which is the defuzzification. So initially you have some range which is in the terms of numbers. You have fuzzified it, you have determined your fuzzy characteristic function, and then you are applying your fuzzy logic rules, and after applying the rules you are getting the output in terms of fuzzy variable, and that fuzzy variable you are defuzzifying to get the original, to get the magnitude in the original range, in the original number range, whatever you are doing. So mostly this is a LOC approach, because the number of lines of code, because you don't know, you can get the correct LOC only at the end of the project, but you are trying to do it at the beginning of the project. Planning is always before starting the project, so you can only estimate it. So that is why you need to refine that that whatever you have got. Then you come to function point sizing. In the function point sizing, we will see how it is done. We have certain information domain variables, information domain characteristics and information domain variables. We take those information domain variables and we try to determine what is its values, and there is a summation method, some formulas are there, we use that and we get the estimate. Then there is standard component sizing. When you do the standard component sizing, that means you try to take the visible part of the system, that is the subsystems, components, subsystems, modules, reports, screens, interactive programs, anything that the user is able to see, and you can make it into a standard component when you are decomposing your problem. Then you can count those things and you can determine its complexity also. And first, the number of occurrences of each standard component is estimated. Then historical project data is used to determine the delivered size as per the standard component. So you may be having some standard method of defining the size of these things based on the historical project data. So how it stays is that, suppose you take the screens. Okay, what is the content of the screen? And how many variables it has, how many static variables, how many dynamic variables, how many tables, how many and other features. So you can say if it has certain type of features, then the size is this, because that you have derived from your historical project data, his past projects, and you have created some kind of a standard metrics for determining. Similarly, you can do for reports. You can define the modules, how many classes are there, and things like that. So this is what is known as a standard component sizing. Then you come to the change sizing. Change sizing happens when you use the existing software. When you are using reusable software, we have discussed that how to use the reusable software. Then you are not developing much. you are developing less, but you are doing a lot of integration, you are doing a lot of modification. So here you have to estimate on the number and the type of modification. So how much of reuse is there, how much of addition of code is there, how complex it is, how good is the interface, and whether you are also deleting code. Even deleting code is also has to be understood, because you have to analyze it and find out which codes to be deleted. You cannot just like that delete code. So it not adding code is not the only one. Modification, deleting, all these things require your effort. So these things will have to be checked, their type and their number, how many such things, and then you can size it. So this is called change sizing. So each of these sizing approaches is to be combined statistically to create a 3-point expected value. So because no estimation method is perfect, so there is always an approximation. It is a human way you are doing it. So the best way is to do you don't estimate a single, but you estimate 3 points. What are those 3 points? One is the optimistic. It is a very low value, low estimate, because you are thinking that everything will go good. So that is a very optimistic way of looking at it. Then you have a most likely, where you know that certain constraint or risk will come up. So it will have a medium range value. And then you have a very pessimistic, when you think, oh, this will happen, that risk will happen. So you are very pessimistic because everything will go wrong. So at the worst, if the worst case situation, how much it can happen, that is the very high. So this is the best case situation. This is the worst case situation, which is a high estimate of size. This is a low estimate of size. And this is somewhere in between. It is most likely. That means some risk will happen, but not all. So it is not the worst case, neither it is the best case. It is somewhere in between. Then after having got these three, let's call it as size optimum, size medium, and size pessimistic. So this is the way you can combine it statistically to give a expected value, a single expected value. SOPT plus 4SM plus S divided by 6, because we have 1 plus 2 and plus 4. So this is the normalizing factor. So it is a statistical averaging that we are doing here to determine the expected value. So then this expected value will be more accurate than any of these three values. So let us look into those two kinds of. We looked into the size estimation, the problem decomposition, and then we will now go to the problem-based estimation. So when you have the problem-based estimation, starting from the scope statement, the software will be decomposed into problem functions that can be estimated individually. So we have a bigger problem, a scope, and it has got a lot of functionality. So you are breaking it into smaller functions. LOC or FP is then estimated for each function. The LOC and FP data are used in two ways. Normally, this is an estimation variable. Here, when we are doing the sizing, we are taking it as an estimation variable. So this becomes our first estimate. For each element, for each of this decomposed element, we are doing it. That is one way of using this LOC and FP. The other way we use is for the past project. When we keep the history, we keep it in that form. We keep all the past project data in terms of LOC and FP, so that it will be easy for us to make a baseline matrix. And this baseline matrix from the past project we will use to determine our cost and the effort. So our cost and effort will be normalized over these LOC and FP and kept in the past in the repository or the project database, which we will refer to when we are estimating the cost and effort for the current project. So this is another utilization of this LOC and FP when we do this kind of estimation. So baseline productivity metrics, something like LOC per person months, function point per person months, are then applied to the appropriate estimation variable, and cost and effort for the function is derived. So you can determine, if once you have estimated it, you are using LOC as an estimation variable. So you can estimate the size of the current software in terms of your LOC or in terms of your FP. Now you go to the matrix which is keeping the data as LOC per person month or FP per person months. So when you apply these metrics to the size, then you will get the person months. You will get the person months or the FP, or the person months in terms of FP or the person months in terms of the LOC. So what is a person months? It is the total effort that will be required for the software. So once you have got the total effort, you can convert it into your cost by putting the resource cost. So LOC per month or FP per month or averages should be computed by project domain. This is something else. This is saying that when you apply these variables, these productivity metrics from the past project, then you have to careful what is the domain of the project. So instead of just keeping organization wide, you have to keep that information, productivity information, in terms of the project domain, the kind of the domain. So some domains may be application development, something could be maintenance project, some could be porting projects, moving it into another environment. And under the software projects also, there could be different kind of life cycle you have used, and different type of customer interaction you have done. So based on all those factors in which the project was done, the category of the project or the domain in which you have done the project, that will determine that particular standard metrics. So when you keep it, you have to be careful. And whenever you take the data, you have to take the data for the particular project domain. Select the productivity data from the metrics. Based on this, apply it to your LOC or FP size to get the actual effort. So that is, the project should be grouped by team size, application area, complexity, and other relevant parameter. That is what I was discussing. So when a new project is estimated, it should first be allocated to a domain. So you have to check which domain it is. And then the appropriate domain average for the productivity should be used to generate the estimates. And if we go to the problem-based estimation by LOC, so because we said that it can be LOC and FP. So in the LOC, initially a range of LOC values for each partition function is estimated. So we have gone to the problem, we have partitioned it into function. So for each function, we will determine the LOC, but we will determine the range. What is that range? It will have an optimistic value, it will have a most likely value, and it will have a pessimistic value. And during using this, again, we will use this formula to get the statistical average or the weighted average. And once we have got this, we have got the expected value of LOC for that particular function. So now we have got the estimation for the estimation variable LOC. We have got the expected value, and the historical LOC per month productivity data is applied to convert the LOC to effort in person months, as we have discussed in the previous slide. Like that, we convert it. And if LOC is used as the estimation variable, decomposition is absolutely essential and is often taken to considerable level of detail, because it is very difficult to determine the LOC that you will obtain at the end of construction by just looking at a function. Because here it is not yet designed, nothing is known. You are in the beginning of the project. Just imagine it. You have not even started the requirement analysis and you are doing your estimation. So how will you get the LOC? So to do the LOC, we have to partition the problem into very smaller functions so that we can determine how much of LOC it will take. And it requires a lot of experience also to know that this how much it will be. So partition is a very important decomposition, or partition is a very important step in the LOC based methods. And the greater the degree of partitioning, the more likely reasonably accurate estimates you can get by using the LOC method. So this is an example. Suppose you have a software package. I have taken it from the Roger Pressman book. If suppose you have a package, a CAD application, A review of the system specification indicates that the software is to execute on an engineering workstation and must interfere with various computer graphics peripherals, including a mouse, digitizer, high resolution color display, and laser printer. So this is the hardware environment. Based on the system specification, statement of software scope can be developed. So you can develop a system software scope. Every sentence of the software scope would have to be expanded to provide the concrete detail and quantitative bounding. So for each of the function in the CAD system, you have to go into very detail so that you can get a real quantitative bounding on it. So that means in coming from the qualitative description, you convert it into some kind of a quantitative information. And decomposition technique for LOC, an estimation table can be developed. So we are not saying the full actual say, we are only showing the scenario. So from this scenario, if you use this kind of procedure, then you can get this kind of table you can create. So these are your, this is an example, it's not the actual one. Again, this example I have taken from the book. Which is a very standard textbook, Roger Pressman, and these are all the partitioned functions. These are the sub functions in the software, that is the CAD software, and for each one we are estimating the LOC. So if you go to the previous slide, that is what we said. LOC and estimation table is developed. So how do we get this LOC? Again, we go to each function and we develop a range of the LOC. So what is that range? That is the pessimistic, most likely, and the optimistic. And in this, for example, if you take the range of LOC estimate for the 3D geometric analysis function, suppose it is optimistic is 4,600, most likely is 6,900, and pessimistic is 8,600, then we can get the expected value of 6,800. So that is, maybe we can see that three-dimensional geometric analysis is 6,800. So that is what we now write in this. So for each of these functions, we do this range and then expected value. Then we sum the estimated value to get the total LOC. That is the complete system. Now from this LOC we have got, now we will go to the historical data. In the historical data, somewhere it will be written the productivity of the system, of similar system. We have to go to the domain. This is a engineering application. So we have to see what is the engineering application, and based on the size, so this many size, how many, what is the productivity that has been written in our metrics of the past projects. And we find, suppose we find that it is 620 LOC per person month. That means in a single person month, 620 lines of code can be produced. So now from this data, and also let us assume that the development rate, that means the salary compensation, is $8,000 per month. This is in terms of dollars because it's a book. The cost per line is the code is approximately. So from here, and by using this data and this data, you can combine these two data and you can say that per line code is $13. So single line cost will be $13. And this is not only the construction cost, it is the complete development cost. That means right from the requirement analysis to the delivery. That is how project database is kept. So based on the LOC estimate and the historical productivity data, the total estimated project cost can be determined. So you have to take this 33,200, which is the size, multiplied by 13, you get the cost. And to determine the effort, you will either take this directly, or you can take this 4,03,100, this cost, and divide it by the cost per month, so that you can get the person months. So this is an indirect way the metrics data which is kept in terms of the LOC we use, and this is the direct way we are determining the size in terms of LOC by using the problem based partitioning. That is, we are partitioning the higher function into smaller functions. Now we come to the problem based estimation of FP, that is the function point. So in the function point, we had said that we will use information domain variables. So there are 5 information domain variables that are defined for this FP method. It is sometimes called function point analysis, FPA. So when you do this, you will find that what we have to collect from the problem domain is the information about the inputs, that is the number of inputs, number of outputs, inquiries, the queries of the system, then the internal logical files. Internal logical files are either data stores or there could be some structures also that has to be stored inside the system to be able to produce the transformations that are required, the processing that is required. So we have taken the input, we have taken the output, we are taking the queries, and we are also taking the internal logical, that is the data structures, either persistent or internal to the program. And then we are going to the external interfaces. How many external interface it has? So these external interfaces could be the user interface, or it could be with the external systems also, or external devices also, any interfaces of the system which is outside the system. So there are 5 variables. They are called information domain variables, which are the base for the function point analysis. So once we take this, a range of values for the 5 information variables are estimated. Again, we use the 5 range. So for every input, we decide what is the optimistic number and what is the most likely and what is the pessimistic value. For the counts of each information domain variable is obtained. And that means we try to say how many there will be. The expected value of each information variable, FP, say S, can be computed by using the statistical average formula. Then this weighted sum of the 5 variables gives us the total unadjusted function points. So this is the, then we will have to do the weight. And what is the weight coming? How the weighted sum is coming? The weighted sum is coming because we have to use some complexity. For the inputs, we have to say whether how complex it is, whether it is a very high complex or it is a average complex or it is a low complex. So every input, not only that it will be counted, but for each count, for each type, you have to determine the complexity. And then when we take the weighted sum of the count and the weight, that means we multiply the count and the weight and we sum it, then we will get the total function points. Again, this function point is a raw function point. That is why we call it unadjusted. Then what we are supposed to do? We are supposed to take the environment factors which will influence the estimation or the project. So, so in the FP method, there are 14 complexity adjustment factors. So these 14 complexity adjustment factors, we have to see each one of them and we have to decide what is the degree of the influence. And that degree of the influence, we have to take the sum of it and apply it over this FP count to convert it into the adjusted or the adjusted FP estimate. So this is the total count of the sum or unadjusted or raw FP. And then after the factor, this is the final FP or the adjusted FP. Then what we do now, we have got the size of the software in terms of the FP function points. Now we have to convert it into our estimation variables. What is the estimation variables? Effort and the cost. So size was the base variable, or you can say the independent variable, which we calculated in terms of the FP function point. Then we have to convert it into our effort and cost. For that, we will use the historical FP based productivity data. So there we use the LOC based productivity data. That means LOC per function per person months. Now we will use function point per person months. So that data will be available in our historical database in terms of metrics. So we have to choose a correct category of the project that will match our current project, take the metrics data and apply it to our FP count so that we will get the person months or the estimation of the effort. So Here, what is the kind of decomposition we are using? We are not using the function decomposition, but we are decomposing the problem domain into our information domain values. So from the problem domain, we are breaking it into so many inputs, so many outputs, so many queries, so many, and what is the type, whether it is complex or simple or that. So that is the kind of partitioning or the decomposition we are doing here. We are not doing the function related decomposition here. This is the list of the complexity adjustment factors, those 15 factors the 14 factors we spoke of in the previous slide. Yeah, 14 factors. So reliable backup, recovery, distributed functions, whether it is what is the nature, how is the nature of the software. So this is all on the characteristics of the day, on the interface and the reusability, what is the where we are going to deploy it, whether it is multiple site or not, heavily used configuration, that means there's a lot of load on it, and whether these functions are distributed or it is in one location. Operational ease, is it required, lot of operational ease, is it required? What is the kind of user interface, is it very complex or is it very simple? Then what is the processing, how complex is the processing? Is there an online update, is there online data entry? What is the performance criteria, is it very stringent? Is there some data communication also involved? And what is the kind of installation ease the customer is looking for? And what is the kind of maintenance they are looking for, whether we have to make it very frequent change or so. This will all depend. These will all these factors will actually influence our architecture and the design, and subsequently the way we code the software. So therefore it will have a heavy impact on our estimates. So these are the 14 adjustment factors for which we have to decide what is the degree of the influence, whether it is low, whether it is average, or it is high. And then that is used in this previous slide we discussed. Sorry. In the previous slide we discussed that we will take this estimate of the 14 complexity adjustment factors and convert the total FP count that we discussed here to the adjusted FP estimate. So let's look at the same example. For the purpose, we are taking the CAD software. Project Planner estimates the number of inputs, outputs, queries, files, and external interfaces, and assigns complexity weighting factor, complex, average, simple. For the purpose of this estimate, the complexity weighting factor is assumed to be average. So, because it's an example we are showing, but in real actual facts, you have to take all the three. But here, let us say everything is average, because we have to associate the weights to it. We have to break these numbers. Suppose we get 10 numbers, we have to say out of these 10 numbers of inputs, how many are complex, how many are average, and how many are simple. So it will be a little difficult to do in our class today. So we will assume that everything is average. All the 10 are average. The estimated counts of the variables are indicated in the table, and we will see the table in the next slide. So here, let us say the number of inputs. These are the optimum likely, and so this is the estimated count. And we will consider that each of these are average. So they will have only single weight. So if this is the weighting factor, simple, average, complex. Here we are taking average. So we will take the average. So for number of inputs, it is 4, whereas in number of files, it is 10. The weighting factor, this is a standard which is given by IFPUG, IFPUG. You can go to IFPUG in the internet and you can see all these things. They are all in the public domain. So this is the count that we have achieved. This is the computed expected value. And these are the weights that we are getting, considering its average. This is from the standard tables we are getting. And we are multiplying. So we are multiplying each one and we are determining the weighted sum. So FP count is equal to count into weight. Sum of the count into weight. So each one is count into weight and we sum it to 320. So that is why at the last we are saying the weighted sum of all information variable gives a total count of 320. Then we will go to the 14 influencing factor and we will give a range between 0 to 5. Normally the range is given between 0 to 5. 0 means there is no effort, there is no influence. 5 means there is a very high influence. So we will give in that range, and we will sum it. So the sum will come to 52 sigma of Fi, and the total count we have seen is 320. Then this is the formula to apply the effect of the influence of the these factors. So we have to take the total count multiplied by this figure 0.65 plus 0.01 into this, so that the effect of this is put on the total count, and we get the estimated. So earlier this is count total is 320, and this Fi is substituted by 52, so you will get a value of 375. So this is the actual estimate, final estimate. Now you have to go to the productivity and look for a FP per month kind of similar project, similar category project, engineering project of the same size. Then you will get a productivity factor. And this productivity factor also you will get the rate per month. So you use both and you get this. Just as we have done for the LOC, similarly you will get this. Estimated effort is 58 person months, and the estimated cost of the project is 469. Now you have to note that this is different. You have got a different answer than what you got in the LOC. So that is why we say there are alternate methods, and by doing 2 or 3 methods, you can get the best estimate. You can choose the best estimate. So we have seen the problem-based methods of FP and LOC. Now we'll come to the process-based estimation. This is another decomposition technique to determine the size. So like the problem, we go to the process-based estimation, begins with the project scope. So we'll take the project scope. Then we have the process, our process model. So that process model, we will map the project scope to our process model and decompose the process into relatively small set of tasks, so that these tasks together will be actually doing, when we do all these tasks, we will get this project scope. And then what we will do, the effort required to accomplish each task will be estimated. Again, we will make 3 estimates and do the statistical average. Then the functions and related software process activities may be represented as part of the table in 2 dimensions. So we'll take this example. Again, this I have taken from the Roger. There are a lot of examples which are also available in the internet and other books. You can take any one. So if you see here, these are the activities: communication, customer communication, planning, risk analysis, engineering, construction, and so these one are what is the process. If you remember the general process model, and these processes are slightly decomposed. So engineering is decomposed to analysis and design, and construction is decomposed to code and test. So this is the decomposition of the process, and these are the functions that are required to be done for the problem. So for each function, for each activity, lower level tasks, you determine what is the effort. So then you can get the total effort. And then what you do, because these are very difficult to estimate, so you can put a percentage of it. So you decide to put a percentage here. So we'll see what we have written in our slides. The process is decomposed, and this is where we were, part of the table in 2 dimensions. So that is the 2 dimensions we have seen. The horizontal side is the activities, and the vertical side are the parts of the problem. Once the problem functions and the process activities are combined, as we have seen, the planner then estimates the effort in terms of normally in terms of person months that will be required to accomplish each software process activity for each software function. And then the average labor rates and the cost will be applied. So these are the person months required for this particular function and this process, this activity. So that is what it is done. So the engineering and construction release activities are subdivided, and the horizontal and vertical totals provide an indication of estimated effort required for analysis, design, code, and test. Then here 53% of all effort is expended on front-end engineering tasks, requirement analysis and design. So this is an analysis which we are going. So for the front-end design, you need 53%. So you have to add this. You have to add these two. So 8 and 45, analysis and design, you will get 53%. So that is what we are trying to say here, requirement analysis and design. And then you apply the labor rate. The total estimated project cost will be this much, because you have to take that, this one, 46% months. 46% months is the size. So that 46% months, convert it, apply the 8,000, so you get the cost. And the total estimated effort is 46% months. So here directly you are getting the person months, you can get it, or you can also do it LOC and then convert it, or if you cannot do FP, you can do LOC and then convert it into the person months. So for coming to this slide, finalizing the estimation, if either you can do different ways independently. So we will have 2 to 3 estimates. Either we will reconcile it and take the compare and take the best. Otherwise, we can take some kind of an average. So we have got 46, 58. So the average is 54. So this helps us. At least we know the range, what is the worst and what is the best. One can also take a simple average or a statistical average to get a more realistic estimate. Now I want to just mention about use case, because as you have said, we start with the scope. We said we start with the scope for estimation. And the scope can be expressed either as a narrative statement, or it can be expressed in terms of use case scenarios. So because if scope is used as a use case, can we really take use case and do the estimate? So people have tried it, but it is difficult to estimate based on use case, mainly because the problem here is that we don't have a very standard metric for the productivity for use case. That means we cannot say use case per month, how much it will take, because they based on the type of projects and how complex is the use case, there will be large variations. So we really cannot get a very good metric of use case productivity. So, but however, there some people have suggested that what you do, instead of taking higher level use cases, you go to a hierarchy of the use case and you level within the structure hierarchy is established. So the average length in pages of each use case is determined. So you go to the lower levels, then in each one you try to see. So you structure it, then in that structure you will get some length of each use case. So you go to each use case, you structure it hierarchically. Then when you structure it hierarchically, it will become very lengthy. So you take how much is the length of that. And like that you do it for each type of use case that you have, all the use cases in the software. The type of software, real-time, business, engineering, scientific, is also defined. Then you can, a rough architecture of the system is also considered. So by considering all these things, you can possibly create a empirical data, that means experimental data, may be used to establish the LOC or FP estimate per use case. So you convert this use case based on all this kind of analysis you have done to a LOC or FP. Then you can use your historical data. So directly by taking the use case, because we do not have productivity per use case, is almost impossible. So the only way we can do is that we will make the use case in such a way that we can somewhere predict that for this type of use case, how much of LOC or FP will be used. Once we have been able to do that for each use case, then we can go and do our computation of the effort and the cost. So these are mostly in research. This kind of methodology are mostly in research, but they are not normally used. So we can say that it exists because the question will arise that why can we not, if the scope has got use case, how will I do it? So that will be a question that many people will ask. So therefore, what we can say that yes, it is possible, but it is not directly possible. We do it by some indirect method. So this is a suggestion which has been given by some researchers, and so it is mostly in research and not really a very practical way. So coming to the summarization of this lecture, Estimation is an important activity in project planning. There are different categories of estimation techniques such as size and productivity based, process based, and empirical. Under the size based approach, we have considered LOC and FP and we have discussed it into detail. We have also seen some examples. We then discuss the process based approach to estimation and try to reconcile between these three methods. And use case has been suggested as a size based approach but is not a popular due to lack of standard way of measuring productivity per use case. However, there are some empirical estimation methods we did not discuss in this particular class, which will be taken up subsequent lessons. So I hope you have understood the LOC and FP, which is a very popular method of estimation. Most of you, when you go to your software industry for your job, will be using either LOC or FP or a variation of the FP. So thank you all for giving me a patient hearing.